in the chat. I didn't realize I was muted. I would love to have you join me in this Nearpod lesson. If you could go to join.nearpod.com, enter the code that you see on my screen, VHFEX, you can join me in this lesson. And once you get there, there's a mood meter. Go ahead and choose the crown tool in whatever color you want, and just circle how you're feeling today. And I'll give you just a minute to get there. And if you want to head on into the chat, you can just click on the link that's right there as well. That will just launch you right into this lesson with me. That way you can try some of these activities out from that student's perspective, which is so incredibly important as well. So head on into that lesson, join.nearpod.com, and enter that code, and you can join me this way. Testing. And I'm not sure why the volume is low. My settings are turned all the way up right now on my microphone. So my apologies if you're having trouble hearing me. I'll do my best to speak a little louder. Make sure you do all check the volume on your device as well, making sure that that is turned up all the way. And so right now, I don't see anybody in the lesson with me right now. The code right here is VHFEX. Or just click on this link that I just posted. That'll take you right into the lesson if you click on it as well. You can join as a guest if you like. You don't have to even put your own name in there if you don't want to. Right now, I don't have anybody in the lesson with me. And participation isn't mandatory, but it helps because that way you can experience some of these things from that learner's perspective. And that's incredibly important to see it from that side as well. So I know I'm looking at about 10 people in the lesson with me here today. And so once again, a couple ways you can get in. You can go to join.nearpod.com on your browser and just enter this code right here, VHFEX. Join.nearpod.com, enter that code, or head on into the chat and just click that link that you see, and you can join that way as well. All right, everybody, I see I think we got everybody here that's going to be here. My name is Jason Clark. I'm a senior district strategy consultant with Nearpod for the state of Texas. My background, I was a classroom teacher for 18 years, elementary grades 3 through 5, and then another 6 years as a district innovation specialist before joining the Nearpod team. I use Nearpod in the classroom where I discovered its usage, and it absolutely blew my mind of what I could accomplish with all of my learners. And in fact, it really helped me to see instruction in a whole different way. And so what we're going to do today, this session is what's new in Nearpod. Because many of you in here have used Nearpod in the past, but we had a lot of updates this last 2 weeks for back to school. And so I'm going to share a lot of those things. In the chat, I see of all those, there's one at the bottom under those 4 rectangles that says join as a guest. Click join as a guest, and then you can just type your name in. All right, so taking a look here, this is a mood meter, and mood meter is something I love to include when my students walk in that door because I know my students will come in and they won't share with me how they're doing. I don't know what's going on with them necessarily, and all of us come to our wherever we're at with a lot. And this mood meter is a way for everyone to walk in and just circle how they're feeling, free of fear, free of judgment. Now, on my side of things, I'm on student view. If I switch to my teacher view, I can view everybody's background at once. So I can just scan through, and if I see something in that blue or red, then I know I need to check in with that individual learner because we can't get to where we need to go if we're not in the right place to start in the first place. So it's a great way for my learners to communicate with me how they're doing, where they're at, and I know that I need to check in with that person. And this is an activity. It's called a draw it activity. It's something that you can create in less than 30 seconds, really, because any background you can find on Google, you can throw it into the background for a draw it activity like this. Now, one thing I can do is I can take a look at each individual learner here, just like this. And one of those somewhat new features, this was new at the end of last school year, is in a draw it activity, when I zoom in on a student's work by clicking on it, at the bottom, I have a give feedback button. So I can go in here and leave a student a note if I want to, and I can leave a sticker if I want. Hey, great job. And only this student will get to see that on their background. And so during a live lesson, you can leave live feedback in a draw it activity and in a drag and drop activity. And on my screen too, it shows me that I've left feedback on this learner. So it kind of helps me to organize myself and know who I have and haven't left feedback to. Now, one thing I want to get real clear to, this view I'm sharing with you is not a view that I share with my students, this data view. I will not usually project this up for everybody to see because this is important data that's private. Now, on my screen, typically the teacher screen, you will see the names of everybody's work. I have them hidden right now. If you do need to share work out like this, you will need to click on this little eyeball thing down at the bottom, and that will hide those names. Second here. And I apologize if you're having any audio issues. I'm not sure what's going on. On my end, I have everything turned up, the volume up all the way for my sensitivity on my microphone. So I'll do my best to speak as loud as I can to help any of you out that are having trouble hearing. Sometimes this is an issue I see sometimes with like Microsoft Teams thing at times. We typically use Zoom to present with. So there's always some little issues I know with a Microsoft Teams when we do what we do through here. So my apologies if the volume is low for some of you. All right. Now, one thing that's we're going to start with here is this is going to go pretty fast this next hour. So there's so much new for back to school. And if you have any questions during this session too, please feel free to post them right into the chat. I'll be monitoring that chat the entire time as well, and to try to answer any questions that you have before we're done today. All right, so we're going to start with a quick poll. What were your top 3 requests for Nearpod for back to school? Maybe you had some thoughts about Nearpod. I wish it did this. I wish it did this. Of these options, maybe what are some of your top 3 requests here that you would hope would be what you would hope would happen in Nearpod for back to school? So if you could just share your thoughts right here in this poll. If you haven't joined me yet in the lesson and you want to, head on over to the chat and click on that link, and then you can join the lesson right from there. And you can join as a guest if you want to participate in these activities, which I highly recommend because there's going to be some things later on down the road in the session that you can participate in from that student's point of view. You will see there is some reference media here that you can click on to open up. This is a link to Nearpod's product feedback, which we always recommend providing that feedback to us because it helps us to make change. And they won't listen to me or my team, but they will listen to you. And so I'll share with you where that feedback button is on your own Nearpod homepage. So looking right here, taking a look at the multiple question types, students to see their own reports, and then move multiple lessons. Tends to be a popular one here. Multiple question types and a quiz option. Yeah, that's always a popular one. And the ability to move multiple lessons or delete multiple lessons even at once. That has always been kind of an issue. Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing these right now. Let's go ahead and move on and dive into what some of these are. But first of all, let's take a look at our learning objectives for today. Renaissance's mission, we're part of Renaissance Learning, has always been the same way back since 1986 to accelerate learning for all children and adults of all ability levels and ethnic and social backgrounds worldwide. And to honor that, today we're going to explore new features found in Nearpod. We're going to practicing using these features and then sharing with others how this will impact teaching and learning for you and your students. So our essential question for this session: what are the new and updated features in Nearpod that will continue to elevate teaching and learning in this school year? So the what, the how, and the why. When we talk about some of these things within Nearpod, the content curation and collaboration, formative assessments, that teacher dashboard and reporting. These are some of the components that we've had some pretty big updates this last couple weeks, getting ready for back to school. So we're going to try to touch base on all of those and let you experience each one of those as well. When we talk about content curation and collaboration first. Empower collaboration, enhance flexibility with cohesive lesson planning and instruction. In the past, lesson editing within Nearpod is usually pretty singular. You're independent by yourself. You curate, edit your lesson on your own, and then you have to either share that lesson out with a colleague that they can have their own copy and then make any changes that they want to. But for back to school now, you can co-edit a lesson with somebody else. And well, the caveat to that, though, is you can't do it at the exact same time. So I need you to keep that in mind. But you can co-edit a lesson. So basically, if I was to share a lesson out with you, let's edit this together and work on it together. I get started on the lesson, I do my editing. When I save and leave, then you could jump in and make edits to that same lesson, but it would make those changes in mine as well. So it's kind of a living document, so to speak. You just can't be in there at the exact same time, but you can co-edit a lesson now with teammates. And so what you would have to do is a couple different ways you can do this. One, you can just simply type in that person's email and then make that choice whether they can just view that lesson, they can edit that lesson, or you send them a copy. If you were to choose, for example, right here, the send a copy, that just means you're giving them a copy of that lesson to do what they want with. When they make changes or edits, it does not make any changes to your copy. They're getting their own copy. However, when I click they can edit, that means they can make edits on my lesson as well and make those changes so we can collaborate together. Now, you can also use the option where you share the link out and it'll say send a copy and you have those other options there. So for example, in my own Nearpod lesson library here, if I was working on a lesson and I wanted to say, hey, everybody, let's work on the lesson together. Here, I've started a lesson. Let's work on it. Let's say it's this. One second here. This Science Unit 3, Lesson 2. When I put my cursor over that, I can hit the 3 dots in the upper right-hand side. From right here, I can click Share with Teachers. This is where you see those different links here. I can type in someone's email address, whoever that might be, and then I can make that choice of whether they can just view it only, they can edit it, or they have their own copy. And it tells down here the people with access, so I'll always know who is working on it with me, and it tells you who the owner is. Or I could come down here, and I can down here say send a copy, they can edit, or they can view it only. I make that choice. If I want someone to edit with me, I click they can edit, and then I copy this link, and then I can paste that link in an email to somebody or on a shared workspace if I want. If I was to post this lesson right here in the chat, you could all open it and we could work on it together. So, but not at the same time. It'd be a one at a time thing. But still, that's a huge update to where now we can build collaboratively if we wanted to. So once again, you go to your home page, you find the lesson that you want, put your cursor over it, and that's where you can, of course, see that I can teach it live or student paced. I can edit it if I want to, preview it. Those 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner. And you'll see other options down below. You can add it to the school library or the district library. Doing that puts a copy in that school or district library that anybody else can go into and grab a copy themselves. It will not make any changes on yours. I can move it to my own folders. I can make a duplicate of that lesson if I want to differentiate. I can look at the reports. I can export it as a PDF, or I can delete the lesson right there. But if I click share with teachers, then I can either put their email addresses in and then choose whether view, edit, or copy and send it to them that way. All right, so the lesson editing here. So remember, you can collaborate and share lessons within your school and your district. It has to be someone within your own organization. I can't share this lesson out with someone in a different district completely and work collaboratively that way. It has to be somebody within your own school or district. So keep that in mind as well. But remember, the can view means they can view access. They can see the same version of the lesson as the owner, including the edits. They can see everything, but they can't make any changes. Editor means you have access to the same version of the lesson as the lesson owner. You can make edits to that lesson yourself. That's the one that I would use if you want to work collaboratively. Sending a copy means you receive a copy of that lesson with the edits from that owner, but you can make changes on it and it won't make effects to the master copy that that owner has. Now talk about organization. In the past, in our Nearpod libraries, we could only move one lesson at a time. And this was honestly kind of annoying because maybe I wanted to move a lot of lessons into folders. Now, in my lesson library, you will see a whole bunch of folders here. I highly recommend creating a folder structure in your Nearpod library. If you don't, all of the lessons that you create and download will just stack up down below, and they keep going and going and going forever. It becomes a hot mess really quick. And so you can create folders by hitting this folder button right here to create new folder. When you do that, you'll have a folder created. And what you can do then is to go to that folder, and those folders each have 3 dots on them. If you hit the 3 dots, there'll be a drop down, and this is where you can share that entire folder out now. You can send that entire folder to the school library or district library, not something you could do in the past. Or I can move it to, I can add subfolders or even change the color. So basically, once you create those folders, then you can start to bring lessons into those folders down below. In the past, all you could do was click the 3 dots on that lesson and click move, and then just choose what folder you wanted that lesson to move to, one at a time. It was tedious. It took a long time, especially if you're hot mess down in your lesson library like mine. One thing you could also do is you could grab, click, and hold that and drag that lesson and drop it into a folder, just like that. But you couldn't do it multiple times. Can you download directly to the folder that you need to move in? That's a good question. Watch this. If I go to my Nearpod library, and let's say I don't believe that that's the case, but if I want to go into a lesson, I'm going to go to get a virtual reality lesson here, maybe a field trip. There's hundreds of virtual reality field trips preset for you in here. And let's say I want to download a lesson here, like let's say historic events of the French Revolution. When I click add to my lessons, it won't take it into one of those folders. It will just download it right into library, but then from there, you can move it into the folders. Now, sometimes though, if the lesson bundle is in an entire folder, if it's bundled, you can download that entire folder and it will create its own folder within your folder organization already. But if it's individual lessons like this, when I click add to my lessons, it's going to just drop it into my lesson library where then I have to move it. If I click preview on a lesson, it's kind of the same. I can preview that lesson in its entirety. I can teach it right now if I wanted to. There's 3 dots right here. I can add it right to the school or district library, but not any of mine. But if I click add to my lessons, it does the same thing. And so when I go back to my home page, you'll see here's those lessons right here. Now I can move them into the folders. So you can't take them right from our library and drop them into a folder. Now, if I go into a school or district library, for example, though, and these are ones that are curated by my district or my school administrator, whoever is the Nearpod administrator. If there's lessons in here, it's the same thing. It's going to, if I want this lesson right here, if I click add to my lessons, it's going to do the same. It's going to drop it. I can click, well, add to a folder. I don't think, yeah, that won't add it into, that just changes it, adds it to a folder within this own library. Either way, you've got to download it into your library, and from there, then you can move it into the folders. But now you'll see down below, though, which is great, is in the past, you could only drag one lesson at a time. But now you'll see when I put my cursor over a lesson, there's a little checkbox. I can check multiple lessons like this. And as I start to check those multiple lessons, down below now I have it where I can move this to one of my own folders that I've created myself or right to the district or school library. So if I add these to the school district library, maybe I created these lessons, I want colleagues in my district to be able to use them. If you have access to that district library, if you see it on the left-hand side of your navigation bar, I can click add, and then I can throw that right into a specific folder that's already there. Now, only your district or school district administrators have the ability to create the folders within the district library. Once they have those folders created, you can put content into those. But if I click move, then I can move it into any of my own lesson library right here. I'll move it into 4th grade. I move. Those lessons have now been moved into that folder right here. There they are. All right, so that's exciting because that changes what we can do in our own libraries as far as organization. Remember, if there's a lesson in your library that you don't want as well, like you're just cleaning it out, remember you can click on the 3 dots and then just click delete if you want to. It will delete that. Now, if I want to have multiple lessons here, I can click those check boxes by putting my cursor over it. And then instead of adding to a library now, I have this trash can that I can now delete all of those lessons at once. It used to be very tedious to clean out your library. You used to have to delete them one at a time. But now I can go through and just start checking those boxes, hit that trash can, and get rid of them all at once. It's kind of a game changer. So it streamlines that organization. Now, the school and district library. If you're not familiar with what it is, those libraries are ones that you can save your content, once again, to share it out with your colleagues, or maybe your grade level team. Those take some organization. So if you're not an administrator for those district libraries, I'd highly recommend just communicating with the people that are, if you find out who they are. And sometimes just schools don't realize they have an administrator for Nearpod. I'm not sure what the organization is within your district. But if you share something to the school library, then only people within your school have access to that. If you share to the district library, then anybody within your district has that. It's a great way to share the workload. For example, I had a 4th grade team where we were pulling lessons from Nearpod's lesson library based on standards. And it would be like, okay, well, I'll find all the science lessons and load them into our school library folders. And then my colleague would do social studies, and one would do English language arts. And then all of a sudden, when I go into that school library for 4th grade, there's separate folders, all the content's there. And I did a fraction of that work, searching for those. It's a great way to share that workload. And also, if you create some incredible lessons yourself, or you curate them yourself, instead of emailing them out individually to everybody, you can just save it into the school library, district library. That master copy stays there. And what's a great part, it's a great way to save those lessons that your colleagues that you curate, and then they can take their own copies and edit them as well if they want to. Either way, it's a great way to share that workload. So sharing with your the district and school library, I challenge you on your Nearpod homepage, the gray navigation bar on the left-hand side, you will see the shared libraries just kind of not too far from the top, school and district. If you see a Manage Nearpod button, that means you're a Nearpod administrator. You have access, usually at times, to then create folders within those. But I challenge you to look inside those school libraries first and see what you have available in there, what's already in there. And then check out the district library and see what's there already. So now let's talk about formative assessments. simplify assessments and inform instruction with a consolidated quiz experience. This is a huge update. In the past, in a Nearpod lesson, if I wanted to do a quiz was just a multiple choice quiz with multiple choice questions. And then the next slide in Nearpod would be a different type of formative assessment, like maybe an open-ended question, and then maybe a draw-in activity. They were all separate individual pieces. There was no bundled together quiz experience. That has changed now. So now that the word quiz within Nearpod is completely changed to something completely new. It's going to be a consolidated quiz experience. So what we're going to do right now is to take a look at that. The new quiz experience in Nearpod, you'll see a button that says create a quiz. And that's typically when you launch a brand new lesson. If I click one of the create tabs, either the blue one or the one on the upper right-hand side of my screen, I'm going to click lesson. And whenever you start a lesson from scratch, you will see these 4 buttons. You'll see add content and activities, create a quick slide, upload your own files, like bringing in PowerPoints and Google Slides to use. You're going to see this one that says create a quiz. You can build a formative assessment for ongoing student understanding. So basically, you're just creating this bundled quiz. Now, if I have a lesson that I've already downloaded or I've built myself, when you click the add new button in the upper left-hand side, and you go down to quizzes and games, this is typically where you would find the quiz, you're going to see a new quiz button. You're also going to see a multiple choice button. This multiple choice button is the old Nearpod quiz. The new quiz is actually called quiz. And you can build a consolidated quiz now in any lesson that you download or you create yourself. Maybe you bring in a PowerPoint presentation, you add some Nearpod media and activities, and you can create a formalized quiz experience right now. So either one of those does the exact same thing. Now, what this looks like is now when you choose the quiz button, you can have all of Nearpod's activities, and you decide, well, what activities do I want to include in this consolidated quiz? Maybe I want a multiple choice question. Maybe I want to follow that up with an open-ended question. Because we know in the STAR assessment, they're going to see multiple activity types in that same test. For example, maybe in the reading test, it starts off with a multiple reading selection on the left-hand side, and then they have a couple multiple choice questions using that reading selection. Usually then the next question, it might be an open-ended question, a short or longer constructive response based on that same reading reading sample. Well, now we can simulate that even more within the Nearpod quiz. And so if I wanted to, I choose create a quiz. Watch what happens here. I can title that quiz. Also notice the title of my lesson up here too. This is important. Whenever you create a lesson, I'm just going to throw this in. The title of my lesson is Untitled Lesson 294. That means that I have in my hot mess of my library 293 untitled lessons. I'm not proud of it, but it's something that you do have to change and add lesson details, change the name, whatever it is, name it something else. Maybe it's science, unit 2, 3, lesson 2. Tag it with some descriptive words. Maybe this is rocks and minerals, whatever that is. I'll just type in rocks. Select your grade level, your subject area, and tag it with this data. That way it makes it searchable in your own library. And also when you share it with someone else, it makes it searchable by them. So now let's say I've had this lesson here. Now I'm going to create my quiz. So on the right-hand side, it says start by adding activities from the side panel or dragging and dropping them here. I want a multiple choice question. I'm going to drag it. Maybe I want the next one, I want open-ended. And then maybe I want, let's say, a drag and drop activity here. And then maybe I want another multiple choice right here. So I've just created this quiz with 4 components. Now, each one of these, though, I go into and edit. Like the multiple choice, I click on it. I can double click it and I can create that multiple choice question. I'm just going to randomly throw some made up things in here. There we go. And I can add more questions to this, but maybe I want just this one. So maybe for this question, I need my reference media. I want to use a PDF. I want them to read this story article before answering the question. So I'm going to throw one in here. I drag in a PDF. So that's the PDF that they're going to use for this first question. Okay. So now I go into the open-ended question down below. And let's say I want them to use the same reading sample. I just simply click the add media, PDF, and I do the same thing. I bring in that exact same story so that I can simulate more what they're going to see on the STAR test. And maybe I want to enable student audio recording as well, because open-ended questions you can, so that every student can respond. Then I can go into the drag and drop activity. I don't have time to maybe create one myself. So maybe this is on rocks and minerals. I type in rocks in the out to the side in the activity bank. Types of rocks, perfect. That's the activity I want. And then I have one more multiple choice question here. And then I'm done with that quiz. When I want to add something else to this, I can click add new and then go back into adding other slides or media, whatever it might be. So I've built this quiz that's a consolidated unit. And so now ultimately and down the road, this quiz, there's going to be some components that you're going to have to go in and score for this quiz. But down the road, what this will end up doing is taking this quiz and it'll have one consolidated overall score for that quiz down the road as well. I'm not sure if that is quite ready yet. Because like I said, this is brand new even to me. It just rolled out this last week. What we're going to do right now is take a look at this experience. So we're going to go into a quiz together here. So for the quiz, you can switch to student pace mode, which says your class will be able to move at their own pace during the quiz. Jump students back to live lessons by turning off student pace mode. Now, this is something you can do. It prompts you if you want to do it. If I say not now, I can control this quiz from here. And when I navigate over, we can see there's 3 activities in this quiz: a poll, a draw, and open-ended question. If I want to, I can navigate everybody to the poll, have everybody do that, and then I can navigate, or I can switch to student pace mode. Now, on the bottom right-hand side of your screen, if you don't click that button to switch, the bottom right-hand side of your screen when you're teaching, there's a button that's always there during a live lesson. So you can turn on student pace mode during any lesson. And it says, I'm going to go from just this slide to the end or wherever I want. And so you can say, well, just go to slide number, let's see, I'm on 15. And so notice there's no other 15s, but on the quiz, it's 15.1, 0.2, 0.3. So if I turn on student pace mode just for this quiz, it's going to just turn it on just for now. It's turning it on all the way to the end. And so I'm going to turn that back off again. I'm going to click the student pace mode just for the quiz right now. So now you can take this quiz on your own. So if you can go through some of these activities on your own right now and just throw in some answers for me. I'm going to show you what this looks like on my side of things. I'll give you just a minute. Now let's do the poll, do the draw it activity. I can go through and start to see results for the poll right here. Now I'm switching things on my end. It doesn't change things for you. So you can go through that quiz on your own right now. You notice the draw it activity is left blank, so you can bring in your own text box, bring in your own image, or use the pen tool. The open-ended question, I can always click on view progress to kind of monitor that progress, the student progress. I can still go through and start to look at some of the answers that are here that students are throwing in. And at any time, up next to the teacher dashboard in the upper right-hand side, there is a view progress button that I can click on once again to see everything as a whole, kind of monitor as students are working. Because this is student-paced, you'll notice I cannot go in and leave individual feedback in this draw-out activity because it's not live. I'll give everybody just about 30 seconds, and then we'll come on back together again. So if anybody goes into the open-ended question, you could just throw in some random letters for me. This will help as we move on a little bit. There we go. Perfect. All right, 10 more seconds. And then I'm going to switch back to live mode. How might you use multiple question types in the same quiz experience with your learners? And let's learn from each other's ideas. I like this: groups, thinking maps, open-ended questions. All right, here we go. We're going to come back to live again. Once I get done with the quiz, you'll be prompted in the upper right-hand side to, you can turn off that student pace mode. It's still on. Make sure to turn it off so students can jump back to the live lesson. So I'm going to click turn off. And now we're all back together again. The quiz is done, but we're all back together here. And that's what a quiz looked like during a live lesson. Excuse me. You can do, of course, do the quiz in a student-paced lesson as well, where they work independently. Let's talk about teacher insight here. React and connect to instructional moments and unlock actionable insights and real-time data with for a learning experience that drives results. When we talk about gradable activities, in the past, we only had a few different gradable activities. But take a look now at these different options. In the past, multiple choice, time to climb, fill in the blank, matching pairs, and poll were self-automatic grading. But now, the other activities are gradable. It's just manual. For example, drag and drop is manual, but coming soon, drag and drop will have an automatic grading option as well. That's not ready yet, but it's coming. The draw out activity and open-ended question are manual. So you can provide a mark, not a numerical grade, but a mark that says that basically, yes, they understand this, needs work, needs more clarification, so that you can organize those things as well. So we'll take a look at those right here. The different grading options. For example, in a draw-out activity, at the top, right next, when you click on an individual student's work, right next to where you could normally share that work out, you will have an option that says add grade. So that you could go through and click approved, needs clarification, or needs improvement. And you can do that on each learner, even as they are working. So you could be assessing as they're working. It doesn't have to be after the lesson even. So for example, if I go back, I jump back here real fast to this draw-out activity, just to show you. And when I click on an individual student's work here, I can go up to this add grade in the upper right-hand side, approved. And I can just navigate right through to my next student, approved, approved, and go through everybody. just like that. And that shows up in the reports section, which we'll look at in just a little bit here. So that's on the draw it activity, the drag and drop activity right now, and the open-ended question. They all do the same thing. Let me just go back again here, sorry, to the open-ended question, and we'll see here. So the open-ended question, you'll notice there's a grade right here, a column. Now, to get the grade there, what you have to do is to click on that individual learner's answer, and then I can provide the grade right there. And I can navigate through each every one as well, just like that. So I can provide those marks right there in that moment. All right, now another new feature is student reactions. Students can now react to you live during the lesson. So at the bottom right-hand side of your screen as a learner, you should see these reaction buttons. There's reactions and then the ability to raise hand. Now, the raise hand, there's 3 options to raise your hand, to repeat something, or to slow down. The students can request that. And then there's also just some reaction buttons that students can leave as well. Now, these are options that you can turn on and off, but it's an amazing tool to give learners that opportunity to communicate back with you. So if you'd like to try that right now, either use one of those any of those reactions, go ahead and do that now for me. That bottom right-hand side of your screen, I'll give you just a minute to do that. Where you will see that is you'll have a message on the teacher side that says that someone has left a reaction. Sometimes there is a little bit of a delay that we've been seeing lately, but this is a brand new feature as well. So there's always those little kinks that are being worked out. So if you could go in right now at the bottom right-hand side of your screen where you're in the lesson with me as a student and just leave a reaction or the raise your hand button. When I click on my participant list, this is where I will see those reactions. I'll give you just a second to go ahead and do that right now. All right, it looks like there must be a delay, and that's something that we have seen a little bit too. Sometimes there is a delay in that and the reaction showing up right now. But know that those are there. Now, in the middle of my lesson, I can go in and hit my participant list, and at the bottom, I can turn those on and off if I want to, those student reactions. So if students are starting to use them just to use them, you can go and click your participant list and just switch those off if you want in that moment, in that lesson. Now, at your home page, your Nearpod homepage, your lesson settings is basically on the upper right-hand side of your screen. You'll see your profile. Next to the quick launch button, you'll see your profile. It'll either be your image or it'll be an icon of some kind. When you hit your profile, in that drop down, you're going to see lesson settings. When you go to your lesson settings, and this is important, everybody needs to know where these are at. You have some settings that you need to click to set yourself up for success and your students as well. One of those options is your student note-taking tool. You need to turn it on if you want your students to take notes. The next one, the third one down, is enabling the immersive reader tool. That has to be turned on here for your students to have that amazing tool. If you're not familiar with what it is, that tool can read the text of directions and possible answers in a quiz or a poll out loud for students. And they can have that translated into about any of 100 languages and read out loud in that language. So it's an extremely powerful tool to have turned on. But of all the other settings, when you scroll down to the bottom, you're going to see the student reaction settings. If you want your students to have those reactions at all, even the option for it, they have to be turned on right here, okay? And so you got to make sure that those are turned on here for your students to even have that option. Now, once you turn them all on here, you still have that option to turn them off during the lesson whenever you click on your participant list. But for those buttons to even be there available in the lessons, they have to be turned on right here in your lesson settings. Now, once you change your lesson settings, it remembers everything. You don't have to click save. You can just click the Nearpod logo in that upper left-hand side, and it'll take you right back to your home page. All right, so I don't see any reactions yet, so obviously there must be a delay happening. My apologies on that. All right, so next, this is what the teacher view looks like. You will see down at the very bottom of your screen, this little area where you have your annotation tool and your whiteboard. You will see this little pop-up right here that says, oh, Liz and 4 others made requests, and you can view those. That's a message that will pop up. And then you'll also see in your participant list, maybe this a new reaction will show up. So you can always check that participant list to see those reactions. That's what that will look like once your students have left some reactions. The view you'll see at the bottom of your screen down below, and or at your participant list right there. All right, so now let's talk about some teacher controls. Before your lesson, whenever you launch a lesson, you can turn off those reactions right there as well. In the middle of your lesson, you can, hitting your participant list, but you can also, before the lesson even starts, when you generate that code right here, you can click raise hands or hands raising student reactions. And so right here, for example, when I click on the code at the top of my lesson, I have access to that as well. I can turn those off right there, or I can leave them on. Looks like in the middle of the lesson, once you turn them off, it looks like can't turn them back on. That's a weird bug. I'm going to check into that one. The participant list there, it is turned off. Now, but I can, on my participant list, turn them back on again if I wanted to. So know that those are the controls and where they're at, so you can control that. Now let's talk about reporting. Empower data-driven and strategic decision-making with admin usage reports. Now, if you're not an administrator within Nearpod for your school or district, you can let them know what they can see. And this is important. Now, in your reports, real quick, let's do this. You can go to your reports with the Reports tab on the left-hand navigation bar. And this is where you'll see all the lessons that you've launched, the post-session reports. You'll see a tile, of course, for every lesson. You'll see how many slides and then how many sessions, how many times you've launched that lesson. When you want to see that report, you click on it and you will see the number of students that are in it, live or student paced. You'll see a link, a blue link that's stamped by time and date. And you can change that by clicking the pencil on the right-hand side. You can edit the name of that if you want to. When you click on that link, it'll open up that report that you can see. It will be a overall session report here. Takes just a second to load. Now, our reports are going to be getting kind of a new overhaul coming up too this fall, so we can keep your eye out on that. I pop in here, you'll notice that the columns are here for every activity. Remember the quiz. The quiz had 3 different activities. The poll is here, but now you'll see for the draw it and open-ended questions, I can see those different marks that I left, whether they understood. Down here, and scores. Now, right here, for example, I can see this person participated. I didn't provide a score for them. And I can't add a score afterwards. I'll have to go back into that lesson, change the scores in that lesson so that I can see them in the reports. Now, as far as the administrator tools, what they can see now are these tools over here. I can get an overview. So basically, I can see all the active users within my school. I can see how many lessons were launched live or student paced, and all the different types of activities that are being used as well. Lots of different data that the administrator can see. Now, for quizzes and games, the time to climb and drag and drop, I can see those individual times and how many of those are used. So you can share this out with your district or school administrator or your Nearpod administrator, so to speak. Your Nearpod administrator might not always be your school administrator. Usually, sometimes it's an instructional coach or someone else that comes in. But I can take a look at active users, how many lessons were launched, live or student paced, and the different activities and how they're being used. So there's a new dashboard that your Nearpod administrator has access to see all of that data as well. In many different ways. And a lot of you out watching right now may not have that view at all, but know that you have access to all of the reports for the lessons that you teach. And the new scoring system with the drag and drop matching, or the open-ended question and the draw, you will see those marks now in the reports that you can see for your students as well. All right, so as we start to put all this together, that's a lot to take in, a lot of new updates that have happened just for this back to school. The one thing I can highly recommend is just to get in and build a little bit and to try this. What I'm going to do right now is make sure I'm going to have you open up another tab on your browser. I have another tab open on your browser. Get into your own Nearpod account. If you get into your own Nearpod account, you'll get to your account where it looks similar to mine right here. And I'm going to give you just a little bit of work time here to try some of these things out. What I'd love to have you do is to take a look at your lesson library. Perhaps create a couple different folders and maybe start to move lessons into those folders that you've created or downloaded, multiple at a time. If you would like, also click the Create tab, start a new lesson, go in and create a quiz. Create a quiz. Go in, you can choose either the Create a Quiz button that's in the middle or hit Add New. Go to Quizzes and Games and click the Quiz button and add. Build a quiz. Add multiple choice, bring in a draw out activity, drag and drop, maybe a time to climb. And remember, you have access to all of the activity banks in these 4 activities. Draw it, time to climb, drag and drop, and matching pairs. You have activity banks that you don't have to search for content yourself or build it yourself. You can just find what's already created and bring that in. For example, matching pairs. I want a matching pairs activity. I drag it in. When I click on it twice, I don't have to create my own. I can search for what I want. Let's say fractions. Out to the side, find a matching pairs activity. Here's one, fraction parts. I click it. Okay, here's the matching pairs activity for that quiz item right there. It's done for me. So you can bring those in. I'm going to give you some time right now to build and explore. Not a lot of time. Probably about, let's go 6 minutes here, because then I've got like a couple minutes just to close out with you. So I'm going to go to quick launch on mine. I'm going to click timer, put in 6 minutes, and launch that. And so if you have any questions, post them into the chat. I'm monitoring that the entire time. So remember, head on in, try some of those things out. I'm going to switch on over to this Collaborate board in the lesson that you're in with me, so that maybe if you want to, before you get done exploring or trying some of these out, I'm going to share this next steps for you right here. So you can share on this Collaborate board, maybe share one thing that you learned today. Share maybe what your next step is for implementing the new features for back to school, and maybe share one thing that you still wonder about. So on this Collaborate board here, if you want to post, just type in the search bar, the text field down below. And then before you click the paper airplane, you just choose what column you want it to go into and launch it there. So you can spend this next little bit of time building some folders, dragging some items in, maybe adding some things to the school library, or creating a new quiz. And so I'll give you some time to do that, but also spend a minute or two filling in any feedback right here on this Collaborate board in the lesson with me. And so I'll be right here. Also take a look at the chat that Melissa has added, a link there too. To take a moment to fill out the session evaluation. Please make sure that you do fill that out before you go today. But we've got about just under 4 minutes for you to explore, try some of these new features out. And if you have any questions, please post them right into the chat. I'll be monitoring that the entire time here. All right, about 1 minute left, and we'll start to come on back together again. I'm starting to take a look at some of the posts in the Collaborate board. And if you haven't yet, make sure that you do fill out the post-session evaluation that's in the chat right now. All right, let's come on back together here. And take a look at our reflections here too. See if there's any questions. See lots that are going to try the quiz out here. Use it more often. Absolutely. It definitely simulates more what the real testing situation is for students. Time trying. Great. Notice here, lower grades have a hard time drawing and typing with the platform. Absolutely. It's hard to draw with a mouse or even a touchpad. That's difficult. I mean, it's difficult for me too, and for a lot of us. And so that's a tough situation. A lot of that depends on the students' devices that they're using. I know a lot of times if students are using iPads, it tends to be a little bit easier to draw with the tools that they have. And typing as well. Typing is a skill that all of our students need to start learning early. And so that is something too, if you can find lessons that we have a lesson package, but it's a separate piece that walks students through typing. But I know there's other programs out there as well. And give any opportunity you can give them to use audio for our younger students is a positive thing. And you can do that a lot through the open-ended question because you can record student audio. All you have to do is click record and speak. Also, even in a Collaborate board like this, you can use audio as well to communicate. And if it's like a time to climb, you can have images as answers as well, which is great for our younger students. All right, everybody, our time is up. I want to thank you so much for joining me today and just thank you so much for what you do each and every day. You have the hardest job in the world, and it's the most important job in the world. You have a very powerful learning tool here that's gotten even better. Try these new things out, get in there, click all the buttons. You're not going to hurt anything. But I wish you nothing but the best for the beginning of your school year.